If you're a gaming nerd such as myself, it goes without saying that you've played a lot of games. Unless you're one of those gamers that's only played like, I don't know, like one game in their whole life. I hear that's what FIFA people are like, I don't know. But for me personally, whenever I started streaming on Twitch, I started talking about my childhood and how I became all of this. And there's a lot of games that you hear me talk about, and it's easy to see which ones really cemented into my personality. But like, what was that tipping points? And that's where today I'm asking you to ask yourself, what made you realize that you were a gamer? So in my timeline, games started out with Doom, some older Apogee games, and a lot of small game demos that were on my mom's Windows 3.1 machine. And while these games were great, and I did play them a lot, I was still what a family therapist at least would call normal. Still commonly playing outside, making a bunch of friends, watching Blue's Clues, all that good stuff that 3 or 4 year olds are doing, except playing Doom. Next I remember came at the same year, the PlayStation 1 from my mom and the Nintendo 64 from my dad. And suddenly I'm looking at games like Yoshi's Story, GoldenEye 64, Crash Bandicoot 2, WWF In Your House, and then Need for Speed 2. Still a fairly normal kid though. Gaming was used to fill that gap in between school. I was playing soccer at the time, I'm playing with friends and hanging out with friends, and when my parents were working, of course. I specifically remember like my dad had a business right at the house we lived at, and he had this huge garage out back and everything. He would leave us inside and go do his work, and that's when I would go and grind out levels of GoldenEye for hours at a cap. Although, I was never that good at it. I never got Aztec or Egyptian for that matter. But even then, I would still say I was normal, still social, still did a lot about playing games. A good number of games came into my life, but looking at the release dates of games, it would have been the summer of 1999 that a neighbor of mine had me over to their house to play games. Or, well, most of them were single-player games, so we'd more just watch and pass the controller between us. You know how that went. After he showed me Twisted Metal 2, then they let me borrow that game, and I realized that Twisted Metal 2 is an amazing game. I started to really trust their taste in games. And it was at one of these visits that I went to, those neighbors showed me Final Fantasy VIII. It wasn't like an instant amazement or anything like that, but I watched it and went like, that looks pretty cool. It was watching them do like the limit breaks and show off the GF cinematics. That's what really caught my interest, the flashiness of it all. It was those big explosions and the really bright colors that drew me into it. And I also strangely remember seeing like a lot of the weapons catalogs in that game, and for some reason like the one neighbor was just like, he showed me all of them, so I remember seeing like all the gun blades up to Lionheart and just being fascinated with how all the weapons looked. And that particular art style that those magazines had in the game, I was just like, ooh, this is what looks really cool, and my 7-8-year-old brain was fascinated by that. So then it was fall of that year, and I did have some spare allowance money, and I ended up buying Final Fantasy VIII on an impulse. And I remember going in with no plan in particular to my electronics boutique, not GameStop, not Walmart, my good old electronics boutique, before EB Games even. And like back in the day, I'd go in without a plan because, I got $30, I'm high rolling. I can buy whatever I want from this place. And it was my first Final Fantasy title, my first RPG for that matter, and the first time I really needed to understand like a modicum of strategy to any game, and I was terrible at it. I was so bad. My strategy 100% of the way was I would just use the GF summons in every fight, and like if I heard the boss music, I'm like, GF's gotta go, they gotta get launched. I never used magic, I never knew how to use the draw system. I would just like go to the train station that was near Balam Garden, and I would just go buy tents, and that was my strategy. Low on health? Well, I don't know how to cure yet, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get out of the battle and then go use a tent, and that was like the whole strategy. And like, I remember I failed to beat Ifrit, I died to the El Noil, I think I pronounced that wrong, but either way, the Mecha Spider on Dalit, like all of these really early on game fights that if you understand at least how to control your character, then you know what to do. If I'm being real, I think I died to just about every single boss on Disc 1, except I specifically remember not dying to the final boss on Disc 1, because I at least got a bit of understanding by that point. more than any was when I learned that Diablo existed, which you like open this one item up and it starts you in this battle, and yeah, I was scared, I wasn't prepared, and he absolutely destroyed me. Not knowing the draw system, though, had to be the biggest killer, because I only had magic that I would gather from, like, the little pods that were around everywhere. And that was my only source of gaining magic and therefore gaining power. So, like, getting to the train station in Timber, I was, like, so severely understated by that point, it hurt. So I would run around these areas and try and grind to get levels, because at least that part made sense to me, but those levels didn't mean anywhere near as much without the magic to equip and unlocking things through your GFs and the different junctions and having everything level up around you. And so all I did was try and melee stuff and use GFs, and because of that, I got wiped out so many times. To add insult to the injury, I think my third disc was scratched, and I think my fourth disc might have been messed up as well. So I would usually play disc 1, and sometimes play disc 2, and then restart. So it's Balam, Ifrit, Dalit, doing the dancing scene, Laguna, Timber, Galbadia, you get the idea. I played them like clockwork, and it was just rinse and repeat, every single time. But it was only after I went on the good old-fashioned websites of Cheat Planet and CheatCC.com, and I printed out all the tips and tricks that I discovered, like the card game. I learned how to draw using the GF and the junction system, and like then the big game had this freaking renaissance. Like, oh, this is how I was supposed to be playing it? Like, the game got so stupid easy in comparison. Like, I remember taking down T-Rexar for the first time, and I learned I could blind him, and I could silence them, and just... It took me a few years after I got the game until I was actually able to officially beat all 4 discs, see the end credits, and when I hit that point, I beat it a couple times, just to make sure that I got it. And that game was the tipping point for me, and all of those memories is what I believe separates me and when I became, like, the gamer type. My brother never had interest in that game, no friends other than the neighbors that showed me that game ever had interest in it, and that's when I could tell that I started to separate to play games, like, abnormally more than my friends and peers around me. Usually I was the one introducing friends to these type of games, and a lot of times there wasn't that many games coming back in return because I already knew about them, I already understood them, I already had my opinions of them. You know, at that point I was getting well informed on all games. Following that though, I have to give an honorable mention. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Kingdom Hearts in this as well. I was playing a lot of games at this point, and my mom gifted me a subscription to the official PlayStation magazine, which was really kind of game-changing when I actually had news, a reliable news source to look at when it came to all things gaming. And back then, all of them would come with those awesome demo discs, which I know I still have them somewhere in my house. Like, I gotta try and do something with those and see if they still work. But on every disc for a while was a trailer for Kingdom Hearts. It was a few months in a row. I saw the Final Fantasy characters in it, which I had my Final Fantasy VIII. I had learned a bit about Final Fantasy VII. Like, I knew Cloud and Yuffie and Aerith, and I grew up watching Disney movies, so that's a combination that made sense. I was on board. It was the first game that I can recall ever anticipating. Like, I was waiting for the release date. It was the first game I ever had hype for. And when I got it, which I'm pretty sure had to have been Christmas of 2002, I wasn't disappointed with the game in the slightest. Like, it was some of the most addicted I've been to a game, the game I'm pretty sure I've replayed the most out of any title that in my collection to this day. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. on school mornings just so I could get time in early in the morning just to get games going before school. Like, I still remember distinctly the feeling I had. Like, there was such an energy for life whenever I got Kingdom Hearts. Like, it's this game that I've been hyped for a while about, and it was the feeling of going through Destiny Islands for the first time that was filling me with excitement. Like, this game is finally here, and it's still one of those memories that's like, I really cherish. The game didn't feel much like what the trailer showed me, and that was in a good surprise kind of way. Like, I didn't expect the island. I didn't expect whenever you get sent to Traverse Town. Like, I felt what Sora was feeling. Like, I felt lost, and I was confused, and I was somewhat frightened that I was taken away from those super comfortable islands and in this new area that I had no clue about. It baffles me how well I can remember those feelings I had back in the day, and I remember them so well. Looking back, it feels like Final Fantasy VIII crawled so that Kingdom Hearts could run, and that was when I was undoubtedly a gamer, was whenever I was finishing Kingdom Hearts. That official line crossed when my mom was concerned that I'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning to grind out, Olympus Coliseum trials before school. Every waking moment that I wasn't like working on something for school or doing sports, it was playing like those two games primarily, and I was playing them a lot, and every day was a bit of a marathon of playing those games. Like, for the whole complete memory, like, I remember coming home from school, you jump on for a couple of hours, go eat dinner, keep playing for a couple hours, then it was time to get a snack and watch some good old-fashioned Nickelodeon 90s cartoons, get back on for the rest of the night, but gotta go to bed by like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., because I gotta get up early to play more of it in the morning. Those were some good times in my life, oh my god. Oh! Now, I know this video is very self-infatuating, as it's just me recalling my own story with gaming, but it's one I really enjoy recalling and retelling to everyone. Like, I also ask questions like this because I want to hear your stories of when that realization hit you. It's still so wild to me when I hear it's something like Modern Warfare 2 for a lot of people, and playing that game online endlessly was what made them a gamer. Which, like, kids that play Modern Warfare 2 when they were like 5 or 6 are like adults now. Maybe it's just the feelings of getting old at this point, but it still feels hard to like fully conceptualize that when I was going through high school playing Modern Warfare 2, these kids are just starting out. And of course we all play hyper-violent video games whenever we're super young, just like the ESRB wanted. But I encourage you to tell me about the games that paved the way for you. I believe it helps understand why you love what you love when it comes to everything video games. Comment or make a video reply. Remember when YouTube had video replies? I miss those. But send a video my way however you can see fit. I would really like to see what games people hit that it was whenever they fell in love with a game and played it non-stop, or it was like the biggest thing that they could think about with their day. It's cool to hear those stories, you know? But thank you for watching, everybody. I really enjoyed making this. If you enjoyed the video and me rambling on about my own little stories, like, sub, bell if you enjoyed it. I'm going to try a lot of these random gaming thought type of videos in the future. And until that video, stay thirsty, my friends.